Hi, I'm Greg Schaffer, and welcome to the Virtual CISO Moment. Today's guest is Travis Whitesel. He is a cyber threat intelligence professional, educator, and cybersecurity consultant with a diverse background spanning military intelligence, academia, and private consulting. Now, he currently serves as a cyber planner with the U.S. Northern Command while also working as an adjunct instructor for Pikes Peak State College. And it's a mouthful right there. And leading Victory Cybersecurity Consulting, where he focuses on helping underserved organizations in sectors like sports, healthcare, and academia strengthen their cybersecurity posture within real-world budget constraints. We all know about those. He's also completing his PhD in cybersecurity and holds several professional certifications, including the CompTIA Security Plus and Network Plus. Travis, thank you so much for joining us today.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I'm stoked to be here. I love your podcast, so I'm just excited to be here. So thank you.
All right. Now I've got like 3 fans. That's awesome. I appreciate that. Well, and I do appreciate too, we are actually recording this on a Monday instead of a Friday, and I appreciate your willingness to move it off a day, because I had a chance to do some volunteering. I'll be completely transparent. I had a chance to do some volunteering outdoors, helping to build a mountain bike trail, or rather helping to fix a mountain bike trail. And that's one of my passions, one of the things that I do to help decompress from the stresses, and we'll talk about that later. But before we get to all that, as always, I'd like to hear your story, Travis, how and when you got started in cyber, and just bring us all the way up to what you're doing today.
Yeah, absolutely. So a bit of a winding path, if you will. So military career started in 2010 as a intelligence analyst, and I did mainly geopolitical and strategic intelligence, which is looking at how governments operate and things of that nature. And then it wasn't until 2020 that I was able to switch to do intelligence support to cyber. And that started out as cyber threat intelligence. And at that point, I only had my master's in national security studies, and with a concentration in cyber. So I had familiarity with how nations plan to leverage cyber capabilities. I never understood the actual tactical understanding, if you will, or the frontline defender understanding. And that was really an educational moment for me to bridge strategic to tactical, is what I would call it. And from there, I said, hey, I want to continue doing intel support to cyber. Unfortunately, it just wasn't in the Army's plans for me. So as a result of that, I switched over to cyber warfare technician as a complete job change about 2 years ago. And at which point, when I started my PhD around that same time during that transition, and my main focus was in sports academically, and I began to notice a tremendous gap between cybersecurity and then traditional security domains for sports. And it was extremely concerning. So that really is what spurred Victory Cyber. My wife heard me complain many of nights while doing research, talking about why don't they do this, and this is a huge vulnerability that the sports industry has. She said, well, why don't you fix it? I said, well, that's a big problem, but she has a business background. And that's what started Victory Cyber Consulting, was actually her and her business acumen saying, hey, you have the talent to fix it. Let's try to get after this problem set together. So that's kind of where I am now. I work at Northcom, doing more strategic cyber again, helping plan and things of that nature. But yeah, and then I come home from work, as we were discussing a little bit earlier, come home from work, take off the military uniform, and then put on my Victory Cyber hat and my dad hat. And I do that until I go to bed and wake up and do it again.
Well, I love the fact that you found a problem, you saw a problem, and with your wife's prodding, you were diving in to help fix it, because ultimately, when I I often ask that question. It's like, well, why did you even want to get into this field?
Yeah.
And the incorrect answer is money. And unfortunately, it's like a lot of people, they got drawn into cyber like a few years ago because it was very lucrative. And I'm of the opinion that if you don't have a passion for it,
Yeah.
if you don't feel like you're making a difference, then you're going to get burned out really easily. And you're making a difference with Victory Cyber. What's like? Give me an example of like one of the things that you have helped solve in Victory.
Yeah, absolutely. So a common misconception in the sports industry, at least that I've noticed, and I'm sure many cybersecurity professionals have heard it from maybe executive individuals, and it could just be a lack of knowledge or ignorance about cybersecurity. But when I talk to them initially, they say, "Hey, we don't need any help. We have an IT guy, right?"
Yeah.
And it's, hey, IT is a little bit different than cybersecurity, and it's understanding the nuances of that. The way I kind of describe it, for the sports world at least, is your quarterback is kind of the IT infrastructure. They're leading everything. They're implementing changes and calling the plays, if you will, to meet business objectives. Cybersecurity is kind of that left tackle. They're probably the second highest paid individual on the team, and they're there to protect that quarterback because that's your money maker. And that's the way I've tried to describe it to them. And depending on what kind of sport person I'm talking to, if it's not a football university, it's a basketball university, I'll change that a little bit. But that's the way I've thought about it. And then the secondary thing that I've helped solve is really it's one of the things that were in the questions. The read ahead was education. Education in the sense that with NIL, which is a name, image, and likeness now for college athletes, allows them to get paid, and it's great. I'm a huge supporter of NIL. However, with that comes inherent risks that I don't think the sports industry completely understands yet. When you look at the value of an athlete, an individual, I think us in cyber, we would call this like executive protection teams or things of that nature, where you have a dedicated cybersecurity analyst to that CEO because they're the high value target, if you will. With this advent of NIL, you have multiple college players within a sport making $2 million a year, if not more. And they're walking around with the value of a small business fiscally, if you will, but none of the protections.
And they're usually quite young too. So I mean,
absolutely, yeah. When
they're very much
cyber,
inexperienced, and they go from like like maybe minimum wage or something if they were working a job to like all this money. It's like that would freak anybody out.
Yeah, and then you got to think about how a threat views that. The data hasn't been published yet, I think, just because NIL is so new. And then another issue with anything cyber, for those listening, understand if you've done academic research, is no one ever wants to put their dirty laundry outside.
Right.
So you'll never know really, hey, how many phishing attempts were targeted at this player? Were they breached? And the only way you find out if they're breached is if, a bad news headline comes out and things of that nature. So that's really what the two things I would say is education, and then just fundamental understanding of the difference between IT and cyber.
So I like the visual image of the quarterback as IT and the left tackle as information security. But I got to ask, in that model, who's the threat actor? Is it the other team, or is it the refs?
Yeah, sometimes it could be both, right?
For unruly fan, I guess.
I would view it as the defense with, they have an edge rusher. Some teams have better edge rushers than others. And that could be a cyber criminal or a nation state. And then the refs I kind of view, in no disrespect towards compliance, but that's kind of
I love it. I love the whole analogy thing. That's going to stick in my head. And we often say in cyber, and I'm not really a fan of this statement because I think it oversimplifies it. But having said that, I'm going to bring it up now. It's like that. we have to get it right all the time, every time, and the bad guys just have to get it right once. I think it's an oversimplification, but now I'm looking at it from every time that I think of like the missing it just that one time, not getting it right. That's a sack.
Yep, exactly.
It's like I see quarterback's helmet flying off and all that. So thank you probably for the rest of my career, I'm going to have that image. But I want to switch gears for a second too. And while you were talking, as I thought about this question, and yeah, I think it is kind of related and sort of like the prep stuff that we were talking about, but more specifically. And I want to preface this by saying I'm not going to ask you, or I'm not intentionally asking you anything that you cannot talk about.
Yeah.
But one of the things, of course, that we're worried about today, given the geopolitical situation, are attacks from Iran. And we just had the Stryker issue happen this past week. How serious, in your view, is that threat, and what can businesses do to help combat that threat?
Yeah, absolutely. So anytime you're dealing with nation states, right, it's always going to go right to the top of the worry list for sure, priority lists really, of, hey, how do we combat some of these more advanced techniques that may be out there that may be employed against us? And I will say Iran is definitely, as they've proven, to be a worthy opponent within the cyber domain, right? And the Stryker instance really is the most prominent one right now, I think, due to the heightened awareness of Iran's cyber capability.
Well, plus anything that affects healthcare seems to get more traction. So
100% immediately. I did find it interesting with the wiper malware, particularly. There was a lot of confusion that I was seeing on some of the social media, LinkedIn, and all these kind of things. Executives wondering why this was such a big deal, and to get into that Intune and kind of just erase all end devices where you're trying to log in the morning and you don't even have an image, or you're using your work phone and it's a blank image of an iOS.
Yeah, it's a brick.
Yeah, I mean, if we think about that at scale, that's terrifying, because you don't have to get to each endpoint. You just get to the cluster or the center of gravity where all those things are held. But Iran, I think they understand, because before Stryker, you go back a few years, they were targeting water facilities, those kind of critical infrastructure is really what it is. And I think they understand that maybe militarily they can't match blow for blow, but in the cyber domain, it's kind of an equalizer, to be honest with you, because the civilian aspect, like you said, medium, large, really any business within the that operates within the United States, it becomes a bit frightening because nobody is safe. You don't know who's going to be targeted. So you need to make sure, like you were just discussing, they only have to get it right once. We have millions of companies within the United States. So, I mean, I'm sure from your experience and the listeners' experience, you're like, there's problems at the end of the week that you say, hey, that's a Monday problem. And then you come in Monday and all of a sudden you have a Stryker situation and you say, uh-oh, that should have been.
Well, I mean, that's risk management at the core. You can't address everything. You've got to figure out the best way to prioritize, and your prioritization is never static because the threat environment is always changing. And so, unfortunately, that's actually the reason why I don't care for that statement too much about you have to get it right 100% of the time, because no, you don't, and no, you can't. You never. It is impossible to get it right 100% of the time. And I think it's a little bit of a lazy way of trying to talk to executives about it, particularly when you have executives that have, and particularly in the smaller businesses and smaller organizations that you and I both deal with. I mean, they've got unlimited. I mean, they don't have unlimited funds. Not to say that larger organizations do, but typically you get people at like your Fortune 500s, and they've got their CISOs have teams of like dozens, if not hundreds of people, and then you've got an SMB that has a team of one, and they may be doing other stuff as well. So how do you how do you help those organizations prioritize and make those decisions so that they can effectively use their security budget, as small as it is, to the best of their ability?
Usually what I do is I have them map out the terrain and say, where is your center of gravity? What is, if you got hit with a cyber attack on one piece of equipment, for example, and the whole business goes down, that's where we need to prioritize. The endpoints, to me, hey, we can re-image something tomorrow. We can isolate that and re-image it or do whatever we need to do to protect it. But understanding within your network where all the data is flowing, right? And those are things, as a one-person shop with minor, sometimes even freeware, you can measure that almost immediately to understand, hey, this is the no crap, I can't lose this piece of equipment, because if I lose it, then it's done. The business ceases to operate. So that's one of the big things that I've helped several small businesses do, is kind of just map that terrain and understand, hey, where is the hurt? Where is it going to inflict the most damage if it does hit you?
And when you go through the data mapping exercises with them, at least maybe you found the same as well. I've seen this before. Often you find data that's residing somewhere and you ask the question, well, why are we keeping this? And you get a lot of well, I'm not really sure. Well, what do you need it for? Well, we don't really need it anymore. Then why are you keeping it? I don't know. I never thought. Nobody ever asked me that before.
Exactly.
And the best way to deal with a risk is to eliminate it completely. So do you find that businesses tend to start cleaning up stuff as well too when that happens?
Yeah. I often tell the 1 to 3 person shops I work with, hey, it's going to be a bit of spring cleaning. You're going to see your storage space maybe go from 500 gigs to 400. It's one of those things where, and it's just because I don't think when you're a 1 to 3 person shop, or whatever it may be, a smaller team, and you're constantly in that daily grind of protect or die, because that's what all cybersecurity professionals kind of feel like, I imagine. There's so much going on to where you say, hey, I wish, we did have a smaller attack surface, or less files to worry about and things of that nature. And the other portion of that I find that we struggle with in the community is really communication. And it's finding that common example or way to put it into layman's terms to an executive, like we were just discussing a little bit, left tackle, quarterback. You kind of have to reach to their level to communicate, hey, if we did get rid of these old PDFs that use Adobe 97 or whatever, that has this known existing vulnerability, we could help ourselves here, update, whatever the case may be.
Well, I know from my perspective, I'm guilty as this as well, because I was brought up, I guess, as like, I won't say that necessarily with a pack rat mentality, but it was always like, well, you don't want to throw out something. I'm one of those people that have really a couple of those boxes of AC adapters that I have no idea what they go to, and yet I can't bring myself to throw them out because I might need it sometime. I've got cables there too. It's like RS-232 cables. When was the last time I used an RS-232 cable? But when I throw it away, that's when I'm going to need it. So there is that hard, like, well, I might need it for some time. Barrier to overcome. Now, me keeping a box of cables, the risk that I'm incurring is minimal. It's basically a risk of storage space. It's
Exactly.
So you can give me the risk argument to that, it won't hold. But if you give someone the risk argument about, well, you're holding on to these PDFs that have vulnerabilities in them, or you're holding on to paper documentation, you're holding on to whatever that you don't really need anymore, but you're incurring risk and not getting any reward. That seems to get traction, though.
Yes. Yeah, 100%. And then it's interesting, right? Because you bring up that mentality for yourself. And I've talked to executives that say, hey, like, I need this file from I don't know, 2008 or 2010 because of X. And it's like, hey, you can now consolidate all of these files to get to one singular master document that's updated, whatever the case may be. But then you try to apply that mentality, you think across an organization with 200 people, maybe 100 people, if everyone has that one mentality of like kind of a pack rat, right? Or I need to keep this, I need to keep this, that risk, like you just said, those it's death by 1,000 cuts, essentially, where you're just incurring small levels of risk maybe for each user,
but it multiplies.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, it adds, and it actually multiplies. But I had a little smirk there when you were writing. It's like I just came to the realization that yet another thing has been ruined in life. I've said before that with PCI, it's like, they talk about the attestation of compliance, or AOC. Well, I can't say AOC anymore because it's been ruined by our esteemed member of Congress. But the same thing here, you just said, well, they're keeping it because of X. And I'm like, I immediately went to Elon Musk. I'm like, I hate you, Elon. Because my first thought was like, why are you keeping it? You going to post it on Twitter or something? I mean, it's stupid, I know, but really it does come down to mindsets. And that prompted me another thought. This goes back to military, because I'm former myself. Okay. And I like asking folks, I like hearing stories about what they have taken, or maybe in your case, continue to take from the military that helps you in your civilian background. And I don't necessarily mean what you're doing technically with the military. I mean just the whole environment, the lifestyle, the mindset. What's something that you've brought over from there?
Yeah, it's I would say patience is probably one of the biggest ones. Patience is up there, and then trying to, I guess it would be, build cultural bridges within cybersecurity. And I don't mean that necessarily from an ethnicity or anything like that, but cultural bridges and building common understanding of problems. In the military, CTI was a bit more challenging in the sense that intelligence professionals are focused on Army problems, right, for the Army. And cyber is a separate domain to the land domain, if you will. So you have the land domain, which is Army, then you have the cyber domain, which is cybercom. And we obviously are affected by it in the military and the Army, and we account for it. But growing up from 2000, and I joined in 2010, it was terrorism, right? So we focused mainly on terrorism and geopolitical things that could cause the next terrorist wave to occur. So for that, I wasn't great at networking, as we discussed, or anything like that. It was something that I had to go and learn. But we keep these job fields separate. So intelligence is separate from a 17 series, which is cyber, which is also separate from a 25 series, which is signal. So for civilian terms, it would be your IT guy, a cyber defender, and then an intelligence professional. And what I've found in the civilian world is they expect these unicorns to kind of appear in these job listings that I'm seeing, at least with CTI.
And to do everything.
Yeah, CTI analysts, they want you to be able to identify a nation state, and from that identification go all the way and fix it. When in reality, there's so many levels within there when it comes to, from the military side, of processes, right? And that's what I've really, patience and processes is probably the two biggest thing, is that with processes, you don't really need to rely as much on the technology. Is still obviously very important, but procedurally, the technology is just giving you an output. The process relies on the human to create that action. And I've seen that as a big issue from military to civilian as well, is that, well, the AI will do it, or we need to invest all this money in all of this technology, which, speaking of small to medium-sized businesses, we need this technology to do X, or else we can't do it. And it's not necessarily true. It's a process that you're missing to create the action. Having the technology help? Absolutely. But you can still shorten that gap due to your budget constraints by implementing this process.
Well, and I think that this is a good place to point out that no technology is going to solve your problem. It's how you use it.
Yes.
And with AI, it's all about those who understand how to use it. And when I say AI, 90% of the time I'm talking generative AI, the chat GPTs, the world and all that. It's like, that's not going to, you don't want to ask chat to solve your problem. You want to use chat as a resource so that you can solve the problem. I like to equate it to like being like if you're in counseling or something like that. It's like counselor can't solve your problem, but they can help you solve your problem. It's almost the exact same thing. And yeah, you don't want that's interesting. Your takeaway. What I was thinking about as you were talking is early on in my career, I landed in a job where there was one person that wanted to keep information to himself. That was perceived as sort of like a way for job security, but it's like, no, I need to know what you know, and you need to know what I know. We need to talk. And my takeaway from my time in the Air Force was like, it's like we need to talk. We need to have the process of talking. We are doing this together as a team. There is no individuality here.
And it's funny that you say that, because in one of the questions about that we discussed earlier with the education and workforce development and things of that nature, I actually have networking as one of my ways to solve the talent gap. And I think it's something we've gotten better at in the military. On the Army side, as a warrant officer, we're considered shadow governors and technical experts and all these kind of things. And it's a small cohort of technical experts, but I know I can call any one of my fellow warrants to say, hey, I'm seeing this problem and I'm out of rounds, dude. I have no idea how to solve this. And they're like, oh, that's easy. Have you done this? I'll send over the documentation I created 2 weeks ago about this. I ran into this. And it's like, well, yeah, awesome.
Networking is so very important in our field. That's one of the reasons why I like LinkedIn, but I won't go down that rabbit hole. It'll be a whole nother podcast. But it does help to deflect some of the stress that we have in the field. But it is a stressful field, and certainly, being a co-founder, and I founded my business 9 years ago. There's a lot of stress involved with that as well too, because suddenly you're learning how to actually be a business person, which was something that unless you got like an MBA, you're not taught how to do. You just kind of learn as you go. So I encourage folks that they need to decompress from the stresses in our field, and for those of us who are entrepreneurs, that additional stress. And what's one of the things that you do, Travis, to decompress from all of that stuff?
So with 2 kids, number one is I usually play Pretty Princess with my daughter. When I get home, it's a very simple game, but play board games or color with her. With my son, I might pick up the Switch or something like that, or go kick a soccer ball. And then really I walk my dog at night. I've started doing that about a month or 2 ago. Nice little 2 to 3 mile walk. Get outside and touch grass, as they're saying nowadays.
Yes. Go out and walk barefoot in the grass. That's from Pretty Women, the movie. So.
Yeah, right. Yeah, it's one of those things. I think we oftentimes want to come home, and if there was a problem, I know I suffered from this a good amount, but if there was a problem at work I couldn't solve, I'd come home, open the laptop immediately, and start researching that. And you got to kind of take a break from all of it and let your brain rest, because then you're just like we talked about burnout. There's several academic studies now in the last 3 years that cybersecurity professionals have one of the highest burnout rates, and on top of that, mental health. They see the most mental health professionals are cybersecurity personnel, because they're stressing themselves out a lot.
I was there myself. I mean, I saw a mental health professional like 15 years ago. That's how I was talking about the counseling. It's like, I understand how that all works. But you lose effectiveness the more you're like attacking a problem. It's like, you've got to shut it off and then approach it fresh the next day. Well, part of it is that when you shut it off, in your subconscious, it's still kind of like whirring around back there. Absolutely. But you're not letting it bother you. So you might wake up the next morning, you're in the shower, you're like, I got it. I figured
Yep.
it out. It's just, it seems like it comes out of nowhere, but your little stuff back there has been working in the background.
Yeah, 100%. And I think it's one of those things where when you do walk away, you can kind of, like you said, come back to it and you're like, oh, it's just like doing a puzzle where you're like, hey, I was missing this piece, and you take a step back and it's like, oh, it fell on the floor, but the carpet,
Yeah,
couldn't see it with the carpet. And then the networking piece on that as well. I can't speak highly enough of networking, where it's like the MBA, the co-founder piece that you're talking about, where it's like, that is not my acumen.
no.
But I call buddies who are going to university for their MBAs or whatever, and I'm just like, hey, I am struggling with this. Oh, send me over this document and I'll critique it and stuff like that. So that also, as humans, we need to rely on other humans to help carry our burdens sometimes. And that's normal.
Yeah. And we need to also remember that more often than not, you're not the only one who's going through something. Everybody's going through something at some point in time, and most people tend to hold it in, but it's okay to talk about it. It's actually a measure of strength to talk about it, because then, as you were just saying, you can get some other resources in to help solve a problem, whether it be like something more academic, like an MBA type question, or if it's something like I'm dealing with this stress. What's a way that I can deal with it? So, but what kind of future plans you got down the road there as far as the business goes and other stuff?
Yeah. So as in about 4 to 6 years, I'll be ready to retire from the military and really start doing Victory. I think full time is the goal. This next year is going to be attending conferences, getting our names out there, working on building a threat intel platform for sports and stuff like that. So just a lot of moving pieces at this point. And that's really where the future for us is going at VCC, is getting to more probably universities, considering their attack surface. And they're the people dealing with 1 to 2 people IT shops that are also allegedly also cybersecurity professionals. So we're there to help them out and get them on the right track.
Yeah, I can relate to universities. I was a networking and security guy at a university for 12 years. So it's I understand it. But well, hey, Travis, all that sounds very exciting. Looking forward to keeping up with what all y'all are doing, both you and with Victory, and how that emerges. We'll have to have you back on when you got some more stuff going with there. But it's been a pleasure talking with you. It's like these things for me. I looked at the timer and I'm like, we're already past 30 minutes. How did that happen? It's like, but I could do one of two things. I could extend the time, but I'm like, well, then now people start to get bored of my voice and all that. No, I think it's great to have it, exactly this length, because we get in a lot of good stuff, and we may have more stuff to talk about. I may ask you to come back on at a future time.
Yeah, absolutely.
So appreciate your time out here, man.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
All right, everybody, stay secure.